Hey guys, it's Karen, my review for the series finale of Legion, and obviously going into this, I was very excited to see how things were going to play out here. I really have loved this third season quite a bit, but I also didn't really know the way things were going to play out, because as I've said before, Legion's just one of those shows where you can't really have a prediction. Like, there are things you can speculate about, and there are things you can theorize on, but it's a show that always has its own direction, and it rarely ever goes in the way that I thought it was going to go. And that was absolutely the case with this finale. I mean, the way things were left off last week is not at all the way things played out here. What we got instead was a far more optimistic and uplifting finale than I really was expecting, but one that I definitely overall did really enjoy. I will tell you right now, I did not love this finale, but I did enjoy it. I thought it was a satisfying conclusion overall. We're just getting into right now. Alright, so first I'm going to get into the stuff that I really did like here, because honestly, there's not a lot to talk about with this finale. Like I said, it was far more simplistic than I really was expecting. So the stuff that I really did love, pretty much all of it has to do with the message of this finale. I love the idea that although we were expecting David and, Farouk to just duke it out and for them to just fight and, for something really catastrophic to happen, the finale is much more about the idea of putting aside those differences and changing your fate for the better. And I think that was a really interesting idea, particularly what they did with Farouk here. I thought was very strong. I think this is and they've done a very good job of this throughout the entire series, but this episode kind of reevaluates his purpose in the show. Up to this point, he's been seen as a threat, even when, they were trying to paint David as a villain. Farouk was always seen as someone we can't really trust, someone who is malicious in that way. But this episode really got you to sympathize with him. Farouk is someone who, yes, he knew what he was doing was wrong, but he wanted to believe that he could raise David. And honestly, thinking about the second season now, it feels less of Farouk wanting to use David for malicious intent and more of him trying to trying to see if he actually can be a father towards David. Even though he knows it's not going to work, he at least wants to. And that moment where, he's breaking down and he's talking about how, he knows that he lost, he knows this is not going to work out, but that he's always loved David as a son, it's kind of heartbreaking. You realize this is something that Farouk really wanted, and for things to not work out the way they did, was actually very sad. And realizing that Farouk was actually not lying to Charles was also a very interesting revelation. I thought they did a really good job with that, and what it does for Charles and Farouk, for them to just put aside their differences, I definitely really did enjoy. But I also love getting to see Charles and David actually be a family now. And that's been one of the big things of this third season, is that it wasn't so much that David himself was cursed, it was that his family just wasn't there for him. And because of, Charles meeting up with Farouk, that's what turned this whole thing sideways. So actually getting to see those two, have a good relationship, and Charles saying how he's going to be there for David was really satisfying stuff. I really did appreciate that. And Harry Lloyd, I have to say, he is so good in this show. Same with Navid Negahban. I mean, Navid Negahban was a huge standout throughout the whole show, but in this episode especially. But, just them bringing Harry Lloyd this season, I mean, this is just, when it comes to Charles Xavier, I have yet to see them get a portrayal of him that is not pitch perfect. I mean, James McAvoy, Patrick Stewart, Harry Lloyd, they all have imbued different traits within Charles Xavier, and I think they've done an excellent job with that here. Here, this was definitely his most human portrayal yet, I feel like, and I really loved what they end up doing with him here. They also finally addressed him as Xavier here. They didn't just call him Charles like they have the whole season, which I thought was also a really nice tidbit. But like I said, I really like this idea that they put their feelings aside, and I think that was a really good message overall. I also loved what they did with the character of Switch, who I was very worried about heading into this finale. I mean, she seemed like she was worse for wear. She seemed like there was no saving her. She was gonna die, but we realized that it's actually the opposite. Because of the fact that she has had these time traveling abilities, it's made her father realize that he needs to be there for her more. He needs to provide for her and fully get her to be able to, operate on all levels. She is a fourth generation, apparently. She's no longer human. She's going through all this stuff with her dad, and I thought that stuff was handled well. However, I will say I would have liked it if they sprinkled this a little bit more throughout the season. After a while, as much as I did love Switch, she did kind of turn into more of a plot device than a character. But I did think this was a really great ending, and I love the moment where, she thanks Sid for helping her out and things like that. It was just really sweet overall, and I think Lauren Tsai has been a huge standout this season, such a great addition, and it's the perfect example of how you introduce a new character, but not make the whole thing about them. This whole season was not about Switch. The focus was still on David, and that was really great, but Switch was a really nice addition, and I think they did some really great work with her here as well. But what this also does for David and Sid, obviously, yes, because of the fact that everything has changed now. David now has a good childhood. He's going to be raised much better. Farouk has realized that he needs to back off, that his, future with David is obsolete. It's not going to happen. There's no possible way that he's going to be able to get this right. Charles and Farouk have made amends in that way. And obviously, because of that, this has now altered Sid and David. The way that these two see each other now, it's kind of bittersweet, but it was a really nice moment, I have to say. I love how Sid talks about how she'll always be there for David, and she wishes the best for him. It's really sweet, because yes, maybe these two do meet up one day. Maybe things do happen for them. And I like that this episode tries to keep that open. Like, just because things change, it doesn't mean that Sid and David can't still end up together. It's just things are gonna be better now for David. I don't know if they'll be as good for Sid, but for David, things are definitely going to be a lot better for sure. And I think it was a really nice way they ended it. I liked but the other great thing about the Sid and David interaction is that she's not forgetting about the assault. She's not forgetting about what he did to her. The rape, that is still very much there. And she makes it clear when she says, I helped out baby David, not David. She was trying to change it so David didn't make that mistake. So David's future is changed in that way. David knows that he fucked up. And Sid also knows that he fucked up. But they're putting that aside because they are changing their fate in that way. And I think the show has handled that well enough, but I won't lie, I do wish they kind of dived into that a little bit more. They kind of stopped talking about it after a while. After Sid's episode, they haven't really brought it up, and that was definitely lacking a bit there for me. I wish there was a little bit more, because their, final goodbye felt the tiniest bit rushed. I wish there was just a little bit more there, but it still was effective, and especially them ending on the first scene of the entire show was a really brilliant idea. And the idea that Noah Hawley's had that planned out this entire time, I mean, that's when you're working with a true genius. And I definitely have no complaints there for sure. And of course, technically, I mean, what else can I say that I haven't already? I mean, this show is one of the most gorgeous looking shows on TV. What was one of the most gorgeous looking shows on TV? There's truly nothing like it. I mean, just the scene alone where David and Gabrielle are having that duet as mother and son. You're not going to see that on any other show. It's something that wouldn't work on any other show, but this show just pulls it off in an immaculate way, and I loved every second, and that's something I'm definitely going to miss with the show. Even the poem in the beginning, the way they did that, I mean, it just has such a unique look and feel to it, and I mean, there's a lot of things I'm going to miss about the show, but that's probably the thing I'm going to miss the most, because there's truly nothing on TV like this right now, and I mean, maybe eventually something will come along trying to recapture it, but I don't think anyone's going to attempt it as well and handle it as well as Legion truly did, because that's one of the things the show has always just done such a great job with. It's always had a very distinct feel to it, and most shows, I mean, yeah, a lot of shows do have their own feel, but not in the way that Legion does, and that's something I've always adored about it. Now, though, I do want to get into some of my negatives with this episode because, like I said, for the most part, I thought this was a very effective finale. I really like the message and things like that. I love the stuff with Farouk and all of that stuff. I thought it was definitely really great for sure. And I think they did some really great work, but I don't think this was a perfect finale. And I'll get into my biggest issue right now. I did think this was pretty rushed. It felt like David and Farouk were fighting 1 second, and then all of a sudden they just settled their differences and they came to this proposition. Again, as well handled as it was, I do think this episode would have benefited if it was like 2 hours long or something like that. I think there definitely could have been a little bit more going on in terms of the characters and things like that, because that just, it did feel very rushed to me, for sure. The first 20-ish minutes especially felt very rushed. I think they did a good job for the most part. Like, it wasn't rushed to the point where I didn't like it, but it did feel rushed, and I think they definitely could have fleshed them things out a little bit more. So that didn't really work for me as well as it should. I already talked about the Sid and David scene. Like I said, as much as I liked it, I did feel it was a little rushed for sure. I wish there were some things like the rape that they brought up more, but they didn't. And I wish that was just discussed just a little bit more. I also did find it very weird that there was no mention of Sid, no mention of Clark, or anyone that we've lost in this season. David was so adamant about how, oh, we changed things, we're going to get everyone back, no one's going to stay dead, and we don't really know what their fate is. And obviously you could think, okay, they're probably still out there, but like, I actually would have liked it if we got to see like what they were doing. Like, I understand this show's so weird, but considering this is a finale, I feel like this should have been the one episode where it kind of took a back seat and actually showed like Lenny was doing, what Clark was doing, what were these characters doing now that they weren't controlled by this narrative, now that their fate was altered. Did Lenny get to live that great life that she's always wanted? Was Clark happy with his husband? These are things that I'm definitely very interested about. Are Oliver and Melanie just trapped in the astral plane forever? I mean, hell, what happened to Patanomy? Like, the last we saw Patanomy and the Vermilions, they went up into space. We didn't see them after that. Like, what's going on there? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I felt was a little bit unanswered. And again, I'm not asking for the show to answer every question. Obviously, some things you should just leave up in the air. You guys know my favorite show, The Leftovers, rarely answered a lot of the questions that we wanted them to. They answered a good amount for sure, but there were quite a lot that they didn't answer, and that show fed off of the notion of what you do when there aren't any answers, even though you're trying to search for them as much as you possibly can. But I feel like this show, there just should have been a little bit more finality to it. The other thing that just didn't work for me, though, is what they did with Carrie. Look, I've praised Amber Midthunder to pieces. I think she is absolutely incredible in the show. She's a badass. She's a phenomenal actress. I love her chemistry with Bill Irwin. But I don't get what they were trying to do with her here. So, okay, I get it, she's a badass, she wants to fight, she's not going to back down, so she ages rapidly, which I don't really have a problem with. What I do have a problem with is the final scene between her and Carrie. It just felt a little bit weird. Like, Carrie's talking about how, like, oh, they're both on the same wavelength, and that's true, but that's never really been their storyline in the show. Their storyline has never really been about the fact that Carrie is so much older than his sister, or vice versa. Like, they've never really had that be an issue. Sure, it's been a thing that's noticeable, but it's never really been an issue. They kind of acted as if it has, and I don't really understand why that was the case. Like, sure, I guess it's cool that Carrie is a little bit older, but this just didn't really work for me all that well. I don't know, I need something a little more satisfying there. I love those two characters, so like anything you give them, I love, and I'm definitely gonna miss them for sure, but I just felt like Carrie's such a great character. I would have wanted something a bit more satisfying for her than just, oh, she's rapidly aged now, she's the same age as her brother, and now they're on the same level. Like, it didn't feel all that satisfying to me, and I wanted a little bit more going on there. Obviously, again, they've ceased to exist as well because the whole narrative's changed. but it just wasn't especially satisfying. I didn't really love the way things played out there. I liked the idea, but I would have wanted just a little bit more going on in that side of things. I just don't think it was especially satisfying overall. Overall, though, I'm satisfied. I liked what we got with this finale overall. Like I said, I really do like the message here, and I like how much it did subvert your expectations in that way. It's a good way of subverting them, but also telling the story that they wanted to tell. It wasn't about the fact that David and Farouk, it wasn't just about good versus evil. It's about not letting your inner demons take hold of you and trying to alter your fate and realizing the errors that you made in your life. And that's something I think they did an excellent job with in this show. Is just every single character felt human. They felt very developed. Even Farouk, someone that was supposed to be the villain, we now understand where he's coming from. We kind of understand why he did what he did. It's one of those finales where, like, you go back, you rewatch the show, certain things might play out differently now, and that's when it's a really well done finale when they did things like that. And I was overall very impressed by that for sure. As for the season as a whole, though, like I said, I really did love this season. I love all the time travel stuff. I think Switch was an extraordinary addition. I think Lauren Tsai was just so fucking good in this show. And I especially love where she ended up going in this last episode, where, like, now that she is weakening, her father's going to help her and things like that. It's kind of a nice parallel of, like, David and Charles in that way. Like, her father accepts her, David and Charles are better. It's just a really positive finale overall. But again, considering the way the season was playing out, you would definitely have not expected it to be there. And I think that was definitely really good for sure, the way they did that. I love everything they did with Lenny this season. Still, probably my favorite scene of the entire season is, in fact, Lenny's sacrifice. It's tragic as it may be. I think it's perfect, and I think Aubrey Plaza is the MVP of this show. I hope she continues to do more stuff like this moving forward, because truly, I mean, I hear so many people complain about her as an actress, and I tell every single one of them, dude, you gotta watch Legion. You do not know what you're talking about until you've seen Aubrey Plaza on Legion. She's a whole other beast entirely. I mean, we don't see this range from her really anywhere else. Like, sure, I do think she's a good actress. I just think she picks some shitty movies to be in. But when she's good, she's fucking great. And this was easily the best that she's ever been. I hope she continues to find more work for sure. In terms of negatives for this season, really, it's just I thought it was a little rushed. I really do. I think there were some things that they could have done a little better. And honestly, I know last season was 11 episodes, but I feel like this season probably should have been. This season should have been 10 episodes. There was a little bit more they could have fleshed out for sure. No mention of Amy, like I said, which was very odd. Especially, again, considering last season they expressed the importance of her and David's relationship. The fact she was not brought up once this season was very odd to me for sure. I don't really know why they just completely wrote her out of the show, basically, as if she didn't exist. Which was very odd. I don't think that the rape stuff was as well handled as it could have been. This might be controversial to some. I like the way it was handled in the beginning, for sure. I think they did some good stuff there, but like I said, they kind of got away from it. They acted like it wasn't as much of an issue anymore, and I don't really know if I like that, honestly. Like, sure, I get it. Sid, she technically raped someone as well, accused someone of raping her, and things like that, and that might be why she isn't as upset by it, but having her go from someone who was so pissed at David to her just kind of accepting it, didn't work as well as it could have. I mean, sure, her episode I thought was really good in showing the whole her wanting to save David and her realizing why she needs to save him, from doing what he's doing and things like that. I think they did a good job with that. It's really just, I don't think they handled that as well as they could have. I think that could have been a little bit better. And like I said, where Carrie ended up going in this finale just simply didn't work for me at all. I get what they were trying to do in concept, but really thinking about it, it doesn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things. But still, this is a highly ambitious and very entertaining final season for sure. I love the way we dive deeper into David's past. Like I said, I think Stephanie Coruscant and Harry Lloyd were two excellent additions to the show. I loved the way we got more into their relationship, especially what they did with Charles. I thought was pretty great. I love what they did with Farouk this season, but also just getting to see David as a Legion was definitely a big highlight for sure. So at the end of the day, I still really do love this season for sure. I think this was a really satisfying final season of television. Again, there really isn't going to be anything else like it, and that saddens me because that's one of the reasons I adore the show as much as I do, is because it was so audacious in that way. It was one of those shows where you kind of had to say that you were glued to the television just because, not just of what was happening, but the way they were constructing it. I mean, even simple conversations like the one that Sid and David had this season about the rape. I mean, that was basically like a force projection thing, like all of The Last Jedi or something. I mean, no other show is gonna do something like that. So again, just kudos to Legion for always remaining original and never letting that get the best of them, never letting that get in the way of the show. And I think they've done an excellent job with that for sure. And so now I am going to rate both the series finale and the season as a whole. So for the series finale of Legion, I'm going to give that episode a B, and the season overall, I am going to give an A minus. So with that, guys, that's it. I have now completed all of Legion. I don't know why this took me so long to finally finish, but like I said, I didn't feel right with doing my top 10 list without finishing the show. I still do have a couple more seasons of TV to review, but I plan, and this is a plan, I'm not entirely sure if it's going to happen, but I plan on hopefully getting getting my top 10 shows done either tomorrow, or if not, definitely Saturday. I will have that done this week for sure. I have about 3 more shows that I need to review to you, and then I think I'll feel okay with finally making that list. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have watched my Legion reviews since season 1, thank you guys for sticking with me. Always do love just covering this extremely unique show that I don't think is one that we'll ever see something like it quite again. But let me know what you guys thought of this finale overall. Left your thoughts on what you think of the season, all that kind of stuff. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.